This happened a few years ago in high school. A senior of mine asked me if I wanted to play D&D, and I said yes. There was me and 5 other guys on the table, including the DM. The DM wasn't the most socially mature person. He often tried to appear smarter and had an attitude of, we're better than everyone else because we play D&D, to the point where it became really cringy at times. He really hated us making jokes or doing goofy stuff at the table. To him, D&D was the best way to tell and experience stories, according to him. To his credit, he did come up with a really big world and a lot of different stories, most of them really anime-like, but still enjoyable for the rest. One of the guys at our table, John, had to leave the game for a month. His big brother had passed away in a car accident, whom he was really close with. We kept in touch with him, though, and offered to support however we could. After 2 months, he started coming back to school. The DM decided to continue our old campaign, with most of the focus being on John's character to get him more of the spotlight, though none of us minded that. In the second session, the DM had us explore ruins where John's character's ancestors used to live. Then we met a ghost who looked exactly like John's brother and had the same name and even told us about how much he loved his family and his little brother. John left the table without saying anything, and the rest of us didn't know what to say. The DM didn't know his brother, had never met him, but somehow thought it was a good idea to include him 2 months after his death. We all apologized to John and asked the DM to apologize, but he couldn't see what he had done wrong. He later sent a message to John saying how he was thinking this would help provide him closure. We all stopped playing after that, and I only recently started playing again on Discord. That's messed up. Salutations and good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever and whenever you are. I am Rune from Rune'sGuild, and I'm here for the first episode of RPG Horror Stories. So before we do a big long introduction, let's go ahead and just roll the posts. I've been DMing for a while, and I'll try to keep this short. Basically, I have a problem player. It started with their campaign ending badly and everyone moved on to play mine instead. I still feel bad about that, but at the same time, he seemed to be okay with it. So far, he has completely derailed things multiple times, constantly splits the party, and instigates party drama all the time. So, I took him aside to talk to him, try to come to an understanding and solution. It seemed to go well. Until he sent me a PM stating I was unfairly targeting him and he didn't want to play anymore. So I asked for clarification again, hoping to work out a solution. In response, he deleted the PM, then sent a new one apologizing and saying it didn't matter. I told him it did matter and we needed to talk things out, and we should talk to the group. He refused. My other players are aware of what's happening, and they're all pissed at him. They just want to play. I'm considering kicking him out, but half my table would walk out with him due to overarching friendships. I'm under a lot of stress right now and honestly don't want to DM anymore. I'm ready to explode the whole thing. I'm a new DM and I'd like any advice or just needed to vent. Edit. For clarification, what I mean by party drama is that if anyone disagrees with what he wants to do, he will stream with them in and out of character and drag out arguments out of character and out of game and then be angry and upset, claiming he's being personally attacked. Also, for party composition, there was 3 of us and Problem and his friend joined later. I've DM'd for them before but no problems. These are all new behaviors. I mean, there's a simple solution. Kick him out, DM for the smaller group. I've had players like this before in my campaigns, and I still have a few other problem players that don't really interact much or don't really make it very many sessions, and honestly, I'm going to start looking on LFG as much as that's a minefield of possibilities. I need to find players that I can DM for that will actually enjoy what I'm doing instead of just sort of showing up and being quiet for 4-6 hours. But no, my advice as a DM of 5-6 years, which isn't that much, is to kick them out and just sort of deal with the less players and find more if you want more. If you can't find any more, then have fun with what you have, because at least you'll have players that are going to be there and actually engage. And who knows, maybe the others won't leave, maybe they'll stay, maybe they realize that the behavior of the other guy is just not good, and they'll say, okay, he dipped, let's get back to the game. Anyways, next post. I run a D&D group at a game store in the town I live in. About a week ago now, one of the players accused me of saying inappropriate stuff about his girlfriend. This guy and gal are about 7 years older than me. I'm in my early 20s, and this completely blindsided me. We were hanging out Thursday playing Magic the Gathering and whatnot, with not an inkling of ill will. Then I checked my phone Friday night because D&D is Saturday, and I find out that he's left the D&D group chat all my players are in, and I'm blocked by him and his GF without a word said to me. The only way that I even know it's for that reason is that another player grilled him about why he left, and he basically said I was saying inappropriate stuff about his GF. I'm extremely disheartened. I've never been accused of that by anyone, let alone a player of mine whom I thought I was going to be really good friends with. It makes me feel sick to my stomach that anyone would even think that I do something like that. It was to the point that I ended up canceling D&D last Saturday because it made me so depressed. So my question to you, O community of fellow nerds, what am I supposed to do? I just feel extremely bad about the whole thing, and it's to the point that I'm dreading next session. It makes me feel except that I don't even know if I want to continue playing D&D, if this is how I'm going to feel about it from now on. Any advice is appreciated. Oh, where do we start? First off, I feel like there's not everything in this post. I feel like everything's not being included here. We're only getting one side of the story, and that side of the story is that he didn't do anything, or she didn't do anything. I don't really know. Yeah, there's not a declaration of gender in this post. But I feel like we're not getting everything that we probably should be getting, because I feel like if there is a comment being made about, oh, they're saying weird things or that are making my girlfriend uncomfortable, then, you know, probably, I'm not going to say it's, you know, the accusation is truthful, but I feel like more often than not, people can say things that are creepy without realizing it, and he might have just been saying something like, oh, I just, you know, you're very beautiful tonight, but like in a off-putting way. I don't know, not everything I feel is here, and I would love to know more about the situation, but the best I can say based on what we're given here is keep on trucking through. There are times where I feel like I don't want to be a DM anymore or play anymore because of something that happens in a session, or because of just how people are acting, and I always feel that way, but then I play again and I sort of do that past experience to tell myself what not to do the next time, and I suppose what I'm trying to say is just keep playing, because the worst thing you can do is quit, because then you're always going to have that feeling. And just maybe if you play, or if you, I suppose, keep at it, maybe you can replace that feeling of dread with like a feeling of accomplishment, of growth, or like a feeling of like, yeah, I kept playing even after this stuff happened, and I feel good about it. I feel good that I kept playing, and it makes you want to play more. That's just me though. I don't know. But yeah, we definitely get everything here. So I guess next post. Good morning. This is a small event that happened at my work day off on Friday. Whatever that means. I was bored and saw a group needing a DM. Okay, I'm gonna try to read this. Good morning. This is a small event that happened at my work on my day off on Friday. I was bored and saw a group needing a DM for an online one-shot and potentially a full campaign on Discord and Roll20. I signed, and they wanted me to run something. They were looking cool. It was 3 guys and 1 girl. They already had made characters, so I just needed to come up with a game for level 5s. A tiefling sorcerer, a human paladin, the girl, a warforged. He called himself a healbot, and I thought it was funny. A half-elf warlock and fighter. I guess paladin and cleric were a couple. That's what they seemed to be to me. So I came with a small one-shot, very simple. A town is being attacked by a goblin horde, and they hired adventurers to save them. Sorcerer was in a roleplay, and interact with every citizen in the town, in the tavern. Warlock did some little interrogation with the mayor, while the couple just flirted a little bit with little puns. They spotted some goblins that run from where they were and followed them to a rocky terrain. There they found a magi hobgoblin with a whip, 2 bugbears, plus 2 hide, and 8 goblins. Initiative was rolled, and Warlock was excited to do his combo. Initiative was hobgoblin, sorcerer, warlock, bugbears, paladin, goblins, cleric. The hob yelled, "Be prepared, position," taking the dodge action. Sorcerer twinned haste, paladin, warlock. Warlock took down 2 goblins with Elder's Blast and a 3rd with his sword. Bugbears positioned between the group and the hob and took the dodge action. Paladin missed 2 shots, but got a critical on his 3rd attack and smited the bugbear to dust. The remaining goblins got cover back rock. The remaining goblins took cover on the back rocks and took the dodge action again. Cleric failed to hit a guiding bolt at the hobgoblin. So comes the final round of battle. Hobgoblin yelled, "Kill the sorcerer, make sure he's dead," slapping the whip into the ground and taking the dodge action again. Sorcerer tried to firebolt Hob but missed. Warlock, thanks to haste, no opportunity attack, moved to the hobgoblin and tried to hit, but only 1 hit for considerable damage. So the hide bugbears appeared and attacked the sorcerer. He tried to use shield, but Hobgoblin used counterspell and knocked him down. This moment I said, "Haste lethargy kicks. Paladin and Warlock can't move the next turn." The Paladin's turn passed, so the Goblins used their short bow to finish off the Sorcerer. Disconnected sound twice. Sorcerer and Warlock left the call. The couple was with their voices a bit aggressive, so I said sorry, and I heard a sound of voice with angry. Didn't understand because my danger sense activates, and I also left the server. They sent a message in my PM, but they deleted me before I could see it, and they blocked me. Too long didn't read. DM replied, "The monster knows what you're doing," and upset the party. Okay, so beyond the struggle I had to read that one, I think what happened was that they, I mean, right there at the end of the Too Long Didn't Read kind of explained it. The monsters knew what the party was doing and just sort of like did certain things to make the fight a little bit more hard. And I guess, you know, that's fair occasionally. You know, it kind of goes with the one rule that sometimes you got to shoot your monks, but at the same time, it's kind of like it's a one shot. They wanted to have fun. They were looking for a DM for it, and I mean, you kind of like, you know, showed up and you were like, "Hey, I'll do it." I'm sure they were just expecting to have some fun, and difficult combat can be fun. But combat to the point of where it's like impossible to succeed, and they just continuously take the dodge action, continuously just dodge and then attack and then dodge again, it's just kind of annoying. I mean, I suppose, you know, to each their own. You know, maybe you like DMing this way, but in my opinion, I probably would have left too if I died, because it was impossible to attack anything, because every time I tried to do anything, they were like, "I'm gonna dodge." It just seems kind of unfun and unfair, and I don't know, not very enjoyable. Yeah, next post. I joined this campaign half a year ago, and I'm still in it, and it's great. But background: when I joined, another quite peculiar player joined with me. I'll jump past unnecessary details since I know how these stories tend to get bloated with those. For context, the campaign is set in an alternative version modern world with fantasy stuff, and all the characters are regular people going to school for adventuring. The subject of our story made a tiefling with fire magic or something, and went around in a dark hood and mask to try to hide their identity, so I'll just call them Aenon. Aenon didn't have any big red flags, besides not seemingly getting the idea that going around wearing masks and hiding your face on the first day of school was a bit weird. But we all kind of just let it go and assumed it was a character quirk. First session. All the characters are seated next to each other in some big room for a speech, and they all attempt to make some mild conversation except Aenon, who gives a single word response and ignores all other attempts to anyone interact with. Oh no, I can't read this one either. And ignores all other attempts anyone makes to interact with them. Okay, that was my own fault, because I'm dumb. Some big metal worm things fall from the ceiling. People flee except one guy who the DM spells out to be obviously sus, who stays and watches for a few rounds before leaving. Aenon makes around 2 or 3 attacks before deciding to go hide. The rest of the players finish combat. No one knows where Aenon went, so they leave the room and go to try to find out what happened and where Aenon is. From here on, the session went 50-50, with half of it being used to just see what Aenon would do, while the players try to track down the sus student and the principal to explain what happened using spells and investigation rolls and whatnot. Aenon begins following the janitor, who's cleaning up the robot stuff. At this point, as Aenon didn't bother introducing themselves to the party, so no one knows who they are, and Aenon seems to be uninterested in changing that, instead, Aenon follows the janitor as he extracts some green stuff from the robots and goes to give it to another teacher. Meanwhile, the other players were figuring out clues of their own, and both groups were kinda at a point where they needed to figure out their next step. And it might have been a good idea to get the 2 groups together here, but while the players try to say they want to ask around for Aenon, Aenon decides to go to the office of the teacher they saw taking the green stuff. It is at this point that I should mention Aenon did not take failure well. Whenever a roll went poorly or a ruling didn't favor them, they'd whine and complain until the DM either caved or another player stepped in to side with the DM. We had seen Aenon show this behavior in combat, but I think we all really only realized that it was here to stay when they started complaining for 15 minutes when the teacher with the green stuff escaped their sight. Aenon lockpicked the teacher's office, found it empty, saw papers with their name on it, and decided to steal them. No explanation, nothing related to what they came for, just decided to open a file cabinet and go through the papers and then take something with their name on it, which was in fact just a simple student file. The teacher approaches their office, Aenon casts invisibility, and it is at this point that you think Aenon would leave, but... there's always a but. Another thing about Aenon, they'd often just talk over the DM and therefore not fully realize what was going on because the DM didn't get to finish. In general, it seemed like Aenon wasn't paying attention, but was also annoyed whenever their lack of information screwed them over. So Aenon casts a Mage Hand to push something over to distract the teacher. The DM informs them that they lose invisibility. Cue 10 minutes of whining and complaining before the DM agrees to just rewind. Now you'd think with more time to think Aenon would just walk out the open door, but no. Aenon goes to push something over with their own hands and is suddenly very surprised that the teacher at a magical school of adventuring sees something suddenly fall over in their empty room and then casts See Invisibility. At this point no one in the call has any clue what Aenon is trying to do. Aenon manages to argue their way into being allowed to leave the room and dash away before the teacher can do anything to stop them. But the teacher just walks out the door and casts Sleep on them. After failing to argue that the teacher shouldn't be able to cast it since they're invisible, Aenon uses 20 minutes to argue that it's unethical for a teacher to cast Sleep on a student just because they're stealing from an office and casting a spell on them is basically assault. Meanwhile, the other players have all been making attempts at finding Aenon and roleplaying, but since no one knows anything about them and Aenon hasn't communicated anything to them or even made an attempt to find them and has been sneaking around the school specifically unseen, it's futile and the session ends and we level up. What a good session to level up on. Next session, at the very start of the session, Aenon wakes up in a basement tied to a table because unbeknownst to them, the teacher they were following alone and without communicating their activities to anyone had actually been the BBEG. Aenon conveniently assesses their situation before picking what spell they learnt for their level up, which is Misty Step. They teleport out of the restraints, hide behind some barrels, wait for the teacher to come open the door, and... I mean, you'd think Aenon would have learnt their lesson by now, but no. Aenon doesn't go invisible or even try to run. They attack the teacher, lose half their health in one turn, try to run without disengaging, and get downed by the opportunity attack, and then after a moment of silence, they simply go, "I don't think this campaign is for me, guys. Yeah, I just don't like this style of DMing." And then while the entire call sits stunned in the silence at the deflection, they hang up and leave the Discord, never to be seen again. Now I really want to stress, this was not the DM's fault. Had Aenon done anything to communicate with other players, they would have survived. Admittedly, there wasn't any cell service in the basement they were tied in, which we learned after they tried something smart and opened their phone to call for help, but if they had just stuck with the other players until the first encounter and waited for them all to exchange numbers, they could have just split off from the party and if they really wanted to, and then just updated them on what they found, and that way the party would at least have clues to follow in order to find them when they stopped replying. But instead, Aenon just made no effort to interact or work with other players for their entire playtime, then suffer the consequences and rage quit. After we all reassured the DM that this wasn't a problem on their part but the player, we just kind of moved on and the campaign is going strong today. That's good. A few additional notes of interest. What could there possibly be? After first session, I stuck around and talked with Aenon to get their vibe, and unprompted, they just went on for several hours about how great and amazing people their parents were. Like they really admired them, which was sweet and all, but for my life, the only thing I could do to change the topic was to excuse myself from the call. Aenon also played the entire game on their phone in public. The first session they played on a bus, and the second, MF was playing on an airplane with strangers sitting next to them. What? Still to this day, the strangest player I've ever had the pleasure to play with. But other than an inability to grasp what D&D is a multiplayer game and the refusal to accept failure and responsibility, they seemed like a nice enough person. I hope they learned about video games or something and plays those now instead. Okay, so, Aenon, wherever you are, good job deducing who the BBEG was, even if it was an accident. Good job for that. Bad job for everything else. I get that it might have been like maybe your first time playing, or maybe you just hadn't been experienced, or you haven't experienced enough TTRPGs to sort of understand what's going on. But I just want to say, good job on that one thing. You know, maybe next time try to talk to your fellow players. They could help. I mean, thanks for being a great comedic source, but I mean, can we give props to the DM though? I mean, he put up with it for a little while, and he was willing to put up with it. Although I do think there's a good chance here to possibly excuse the player from the game when you find out that they're acting a particular way that you can't really put up with. In my opinion, the second anybody argues with me, I don't really do anything. I give it a, you know, maybe 4 seconds before I get upset. Really, when you're playing this kind of game, you just kind of got to go with what the DM says, because the DM, if they're being reasonably fair, is just trying to get a good story for you. So you don't want to just argue constantly because, oh, I should be able to do this, oh, I should be able to do that. If the DM says something, they probably have a reason to say it, that or they're being a jerk. But, you know, like they said, nothing on the DM here. The DM did great. Aenon did pretty good himself, just very main character syndrome. The party I kind of feel bad for because they didn't really get a chance to do very much, because I think they said that they were just kind of searching for Aenon the entire time while Aenon was chained, strapped to a table in the basement. I kind of want to know where that was going. I kind of wonder, like, would he have gotten turned into one of those worm things, or maybe he would have been killed? I don't know. But it's kind of an interesting setting. That was pretty funny. I enjoyed that one. I enjoyed that a lot. So that is going to do it for the first episode of RPG Horror Stories here at Rune'sGuild. If you enjoy it, be sure to subscribe and pop around for the next video. And if you made it to the end of the video, go ahead and leave a comment saying Aenon is the legend. If you have your own horror stories, try to share them down there in the comments below. And if you do not have any horror stories, good job. I will see all of you in the next video. Bye.